My name is Henry Walker, and the night they handed me the mic at the VFW hall in Evansville, my son stared at the floor. Neighbors clapped, old dispatchers nodded. Under those lights, I unfolded a manila envelope and felt the room lean in. If you want to know how a grease-stained driver ends up changing his family in front of half the town, well, it started 2 nights earlier on Christmas Eve with 14 hours of road in my bones. That day I ran a loop for Tri-State Freight Line's Louisville to St. Louis, and back winter roads, salt chewing the truck's belly. I've spent 40 years hauling other people's lives, lettuce steal church pews. You learn diner coffee eggs that slide across the plate, and the smell of diesel. There are small joys sunrise over the Ohio. A cashier who knows your name, a clean scale ticket that means you did it right. I gave up plenty, fishing trips, the Branson week my wife wanted but we couldn't swing, the dream of my own rig with Walker and Son on the door. I traded all that for steady wages and tuition checks. Every mile meant something, a mortgage payment, cleats for my boy, one more semester at Purdue. When Mark crossed that stage cap, crooked, I clapped until my hand stung. He shook a dean's hand. I went back on the road. By the time I rolled into his Indianapolis subdivision, that Christmas Eve blue-white icicle lights made every ranch house look colder than it was. I parked my pickup at the curb, never the company rig in a tight street, and grabbed 2 wrap boxes. Emily's doll had hair you can braid. Jacob's train set had a whistle I couldn't stop testing. At the door I caught roast beef onions, a trace of cinnamon. The smells said family. Mark opened up. Behind him a TV fireplace crackled. The kids yelled "Grandpa" and took 2 steps before he threw an arm out. His eyes went to the grease on my cuff. "Dad," he said low, "you smell like gas. Don't hug the kids. Lisa just got them dressed." I've had tires blow on bridges and crosswinds shove a trailer, but nothing tips a man like his son deciding he's above where he came from. I looked past him at stockings, the photo wall, a spot on the mantle where my wife's picture used to sit before the cancer took her. Lisa hovered by the dining room, hands twisting a napkin. She didn't meet my eyes. "I can wash up," I said. "Got a clean shirt in the truck." "It's fine," he said. "Just leave the gifts. We'll see you tomorrow." "Tomorrow's my morning route," I said. He shrugged. Warm air rolled over my face, then the cold took it back. I set the boxes on the mat. The bow on Emily's doll flapped like a flag looking for a country. "All right," I said. "Merry Christmas." I stepped off the porch slow. If I'd turned, I might have said something I couldn't stuff back into my mouth. The pickup smelled like old coffee and pine from an air freshener Emily picked in July. I sat with both hands on the wheel until the sting left my eyes. The door clicked shut. TV flames kept dancing. Driving teaches you to keep moving when nobody claps. Out on I-64, I've talked myself through black ice and bad exits. Easy, Hank. Hands light, eyes long. You pick a point down the road and roll toward it. That's how I've lived. You take the hit. You don't swing back right away. I turned the key. The heater coughed awake. I eased from the curb and watched my son's porch light shrink in the mirror until it was a coin in the dark. I didn't have a plan, only the tools. A long life gives you patience. A good socket set in a glove box folder with papers no one in that house had asked about. I drove home by habit, past fireworks outlets and billboards promising big checks, fields shaved to stubble the moon hanging low. My house in Evansville isn't much brick paid off with a maple out front. I set the folder on the kitchen table with the cracked vinyl corner. The furnace hummed. I poured black coffee and let the heat return to my hands. Those papers weren't fancy. Service awards I never hung. A letter from the company president when I trained my 100th driver. A few stock certificates I'd tucked away instead of talking about. Enough if a man wanted to change the angle of a conversation. I thought about the kids' faces when they stopped running. I thought about Mark at 13 riding shotgun asking if truckers get Christmas off. "Road doesn't know holidays," I'd told him. He'd nodded like he understood. Maybe he did once. I wasn't angry the loud way. I was just done carrying other people's shame. I set the envelope back on the table and listened to the house breathe furnace wind on the eaves, the little clicks of pipes. After a while, the coffee cooled, and the room felt settled like a truck after you've tightened every strap. 2 hours later, Knuckles hit my front door. Knuckles on wood sound different when it's your own kid outside, steady, hopeful, a little ashamed. I sat there with my coffee cooling and the manila envelope catching the yellow light. I didn't get up right away. Instead, I heard a younger knock from years back, a boy's knuckles on the cab door at the tri-state yard. Mark in a ball cap too big for his head, asking if he could blow the air horn just once. I told him no, then let him do it anyway. The horn rattled the whole block, and he laughed until he had the hiccups. I raised that boy inside a truck schedule and a paycheck calendar. Evansville isn't fancy, but it's honest. Saturday mornings we drive the Lloyd Expressway to the Donut Bank on First Avenue, glazed for him, black coffee for me, and then swing by the ball fields behind the old church. I bought him a glove with 2 extra shifts hauling steel coils to Gary. Later when he made All-Stars, I took a Sunday run I didn't want, so he'd have cleats that actually bit dirt. That's how we did it 1 mile for one need. He never knew the math, he just played. Ruth, my wife, kept the house running like a good dispatcher, keeps a bored, calm voice, straight facts, no drama. "You're building his life, Henry," she'd say when the run stretched longer than promised. That's what fathers do. When the doctor said the word, we never wanted cancer. She still folded laundry like it mattered and told me to eat something warm before I rolled. I lost her in the fall of 2016, leaves skittering down the curb like small things trying to hold on. After that, the cab felt bigger and emptier, and the radio sounded like a stranger trying to fill space. Mark grew up straight and quick. Purdue took 4 years of road out of me. I didn't buy my own rig because that would have meant debt and risk. I stayed company and took every holiday run they needed. I remember a Christmas morning in the cab near Columbia Snow pushing sideways and the wipers working like they were tired of the job. I called Mark from a payphone back when we still had them. He said he got the guitar. I strummed 3 air chords and told him I'd be home by dinner. I wasn't. The road decided otherwise. He put on a suit in Indianapolis and started speaking a different language. IRA's 529's exposure leverage. I nodded and drove. The distance wasn't a fight. It was a slow stretch like a rubber bungee pulling a tarp until the hooks barely held. Lisa came along nice enough, careful around me, measuring the grease under my nails. They had Emily and Jacob, and suddenly I wasn't just a driver. I was a grandpa who could fix wobbly chairs and make pancakes shaped like letters. At Tri-State, I kept showing up. Guys burn out in this line of work backs, knees marriages, but I learned to treat my body like a tool you can't replace. Light hands on the wheel, small stretches at truck stops, the better boots, even if they cost more. I trained new kids, farm boys from Princeton, a Marine from Boonville, a quiet girl from Mount Vernon who drove smoother than half the yard. They gave me plaques I never hung and a little stock I never talked about. Once when the church roof leaked, I dropped a check in the pastor's mailbox with no name. When the Little League needed uniforms, I won a raffle nobody else remembered entering. That's not bragging. That's just what you do when your name isn't on billboards, but your sweat has been on every mile of road between here and Kansas City. Somewhere along the way, Mark started introducing me as my dad. He's retired now, even when I wasn't. He meant well, I think. He just needed the story to be neat. Suits like neat stories. Drivers know stories are mostly detours. The knock came again, 3 beats, pause 1 more. Not police, not a neighbor, family. I stood and the chair squeaked like it always does. The maple out front ticked against the window in the wind. I caught myself checking my hands for grease that wasn't there, and snorted. Old habits. I passed the photo on the hall table, Ruth holding baby Mark, his cheeks like dinner rolls, and I told the frame, "All right, I'm going." My porch light throws a weak circle in winter enough to show breath. Mark stood in it, shoulders hunched, knit hat, crooked a dust of frost on his eyebrows. The proud line in his mouth was gone. Behind him the street lay quiet, just a UPS truck parked 2 houses down like a beast at rest. "Hey, Dad," he said, voice small. Are you up?" "I'm up," I said. "What's broke?" He blinked. "How'd you—" "Because you don't knock like that unless something's leaking, sparking, or dying," I said. "Which is it?" He blew out a white cloud. "Furnace quit an hour ago. Lisa's trying space heaters. The kids are shivering. I called a guy, but no one's answering. Pipes are making noises. I don't know what I'm doing." There it was, the sentence every father waits his whole life to hear from a child who thinks he's past needing you. "Go start your car," I said. "Get the kids warm. I'll grab my tools." He nodded too fast. "Dad, about earlier." "We'll talk when the house is warm," I said. "Cold's the enemy. Pride can wait." He shut his mouth and jogged toward his car. I went to the hall closet and pulled the red toolbox Ruth used to call my lunch pail. Wrench roll pipe tape, a new thermocouple I'd bought after the neighbors went out 2 winters ago. Folks think drivers only know roads. Truth is, you learn systems, fuel, air spark timing. A house breathes the same way a truck does. You listen for rhythm. You find the clog. You fix what you can. On my way out, I slid the manila envelope into the toolbox on top of the socket set. Maybe we wouldn't need it. Maybe we would. Either way, I was done letting it gather dust while other people decided what my life meant. I locked the door behind me and felt the night bite my ears. Mark's taillights glowed at the curb like two red eyes waiting. As I stepped off the porch, I felt something old rise up, steady, not angry. The road teaches you to move toward trouble, not away from it. So I did what I've always done. I went to work. Snow dusted his rear window by the time we reached the subdivision again. Indianapolis nights make the air feel thin and metallic, like breathing a handful of coins. I held the toolbox on my knees, the manila envelope tucked beneath the socket set. Mark kept starting sentences he didn't finish. The road taught me talk before a fix is just noise. Their ranch looked like a postcard icicle lights wreath plastic deer frozen at attention. Inside, the warmth was gone. Wrong hits you before you see it, the kind of cold that sits on your teeth. The thermostat blinked 62. Lisa had the kids in coats under a blanket on the couch, cheeks chapped pink. The tree threw soft colors over their faces. Cinnamon and roast beef had burned off. Now the house smelled like dust and worry. "Where's the furnace?" I asked. "Basement," Mark said. It clicks and then nothing. Concrete bites through boots in winter. The furnace sat in the corner, a high-efficiency unit with PVC intake and exhaust panels off like a patient on a table. The condensate pump was quiet. We listened. Click, whir, no flame. The hot surface igniter looked fine. The flame sensor wore a gray coat like a fogged mirror. "You kill the power," I said. "I flipped to this," Mark said, pointing at a light switch. "That's for the bulb," I said. "This is the service switch." "Good. Emery cloth." He blinked. I popped the toolbox, pulled out the strip, and polished the flame sensor until it shone. "Sensor can't see fire through grime," I said, like wipers on dry mud. Lisa hovered at the stairs. "Do you need anything?" "Hot water for hands," I said. Outside, the PVC intake wore a crust of ice. I chipped it gently with a flathead, cleared the throat, then reseated the panel. Power on. He flipped the switch. Click, whir, glow. The burners lit in a clean blue line, and the blower ramped up like a truck finding highway speed. Warm air kissed the backs of my hands. Lisa let out a breath she'd been holding. From upstairs, small animal sounds of children shedding blankets. "Is it fixed?" Jacob called. "House is breathing again," I said. Mark looked at me like he'd never seen me before. Pride is a costume that slips off in an emergency. He swallowed. "Dad, a sharp pop came from the ceiling. Another. Water hunts weak points. Main shutoff," I said. "Crawl space," he said. "Then we're not done." We hustled to the crawl space door. Cold poured out like a sigh. I slid in with a flashlight. A copper line sweated and bulged like a vein about to fail. I wrapped it in rags to slow the heat loss and yelled clockwise on the main now. Valves argue when you wake them after years of sleep. The handle gave with a small scream. We cracked faucets upstairs to bleed pressure and listened as the house settled into something like relief. At the sink, steam fogged the window. Lisa set a mug by my elbow. "Hot water," she said, eyes shiny. "Henry, I'm sorry about earlier." "Cold makes fools of all of us," I said, warming my hands. "It makes people say sharp things." Emily skidded into the kitchen socks, sliding hair wild. She stopped short like she'd hit a line and looked up. "Grandpa, can I?" Mark opened his mouth. I lifted clean hands and smiled. "Come here, kiddo." She barreled in and put her cheek to my shirt. Jacob followed because brothers are magnets. Their heat soaked through cotton like mercy. In my side vision, Mark's face went complicated gratitude tangled with shame. "Thermostat's climbing," I said, letting them go. "Set it to 68 tonight. Drip the kitchen faucet. Tomorrow call a plumber to swap that weak run. I'll give you a name that answers phones." He nodded. "Okay," he swallowed. "Dad, you saved us tonight." "I fixed a furnace," I said. "You'll save yourselves by keeping up maintenance." Lisa laughed, relief coming out sideways. "Thank you." Back in the basement, I checked the flame through the little glass, like a man checking a sleeping child. Steady. On the way up, I paused at the counter where the kids had left cookies like small moons. My hand went to the manila envelope in the toolbox, then off. Not yet. Heat first, lessons later. At the door, Mark stood with his hat in his hand, the proud line gone. Through the archway, the kids built a track for the train I'd left on the porch. It circled the tree like something finally found its route. "Can I drive you home?" he said. "I brought a truck," I said, "and 2 good boots." He nodded, thinking hard. I opened the door and Winter pressed a cold coin into my palm. "Dad," he said. I looked back. "Merry Christmas," he said, eyes wet. I tipped the brim of a hat I wasn't wearing. "Merry Christmas, son." I didn't drive straight home. I circled a few blocks, breathing the kind of air that pinches your nose hairs and makes your eyes water. The road works out a man's thinking. Back at my house, I set the toolbox down and slid the manila envelope onto the table. The furnace hummed steady. I washed my hands, Dawn and a nail brush, until the smell of dust and hot metal gave way to clean. I poured coffee and let the steam fog my glasses. Sleep wasn't coming, so I sat with Ruth's picture and told her what our boy had said and what I'd done. The house listened like a good friend. My flip phone buzzed across the table. "Eddie Garrison, dispatcher, 10 years the voice you want when you're on I-70 in a whiteout. You up this early, Hank, or you never went down?" "Bit of both," I said. "Listen," he said, "VFW's doing the New Year's potluck on the 26th. Post 11:14. They want to hand you that service pin Tri-State sent and say a few words about the fundraiser. I told him you'd come. You okay with a microphone?" "I can talk into a CB," I said. "Same thing, fewer truckers swearing." Eddie laughed. "That envelope you keep in your glove box, any chance you ever open it?" "I opened it tonight," I said. "Didn't finish reading." "Bring it," he said then, softer. "Bring your boy if you want." After we hung up, quiet came back. I thought of the Little League picture tucked in a kitchen drawer at Mark's Emily, with a helmet too big Jacob picking daisies in right field. I thought of the kids warming under a blanket like chicks under a lamp. You can be angry and still be useful. That's a trick men learn when no one else is coming. Sky lightened into a thin gray. Something about cold nights makes the day feel cleaner. At 6, a text buzzed from a number labeled "Mark's Cell House Warm." "Kids asleep." "Dad." "Thank you. Can you swing by in the morning?" I stared at the screen. The same thumb that tightens ratchets typed, "Be there by 7. Bring coffee." I showed up with a cardboard holder from the Marathon Station coffee that tastes like the idea of coffee in a bag of powdered donuts. Lisa answered in slippers, hair in a knot, eyes puffy but kind. "Henry," she said, relief doing most of the talking. "Come in." Heat hit like a blanket. The thermostat read 68 like it was proud of itself. The kids had built the train around the tree and were sprawled beside it, mouths open, starfish hands. Mark stood by the sink, hair sticking, straight up shame and gratitude fighting on his face. "Dad, he started. "Pans under the oven," I said. "Let me cook. I'll talk while I flip." He smiled like he didn't deserve it and reached for plates. I found a bag of Christie's and made a mess, same as always. Pancakes in letters E for Emily, J for Jacob, M for Mom, and 1 for Mark, which I let sizzle a little too long on purpose so I could tease him. When they woke, the kids slid into chairs and ate with the kind of focus that makes you think children might actually be the smartest among us. "Grandpa makes the letters," Emily told Lisa, syrup shining on her chin. "He knows all of them." "Even the ones we don't use," I said, "like umlauts and ampersands." Jacob giggled. Mark watched it all with a look I recognized from when he was 5 and believed I could fix a flat with spit and a prayer. "We canceled the maintenance plan last spring," he said, eyes on his coffee. "Budget felt tight. Thought it was fine." "Everybody thinks it's fine until it isn't," I said. "Houses are like trucks. Skip the small stuff and you pay big." He nodded. "I know." We ate in that comfortable, quiet families earn after they've been honest about something. After breakfast, I went down and taped a temp sensor, wire added foam sleeves to the nearest cold water lines, showed Mark where to place a small space heater if the crawl space got stupid again. I wrote a plumber's number on a sticky note and pressed it to the fridge. "He answers," I said. "Tell him Hank sent you. He'll roll his eyes and come anyway." When I turned back, Lisa was drying a mug with the kind of care you give something that's almost an apology. Henry, she said I should have said something at the door. I could have, I don't know. I froze. Cold does that, I said. So does pride. So does holiday stress. Learn from it, that's all. Mark swallowed. I'm sorry, he said, the words scraped raw. I said something ugly I can't take back. You can't take it back, I said, but you can outlive it. You can replace it with something better. That's how we fix things we broke with our mouths. He nodded. I want to. I went to the counter and rested my hand on the toolbox. The manila envelope pressed up against the lid from the inside like a heartbeat. Not yet. Heat was back. Breakfast was eaten. Apologies were real. A lecture would be easy. A lesson that lasts needs timing. New Year's, I said, keeping my voice even. VFW Post 1114 is doing a potluck. Tri-State's handing out some pins nobody cares about but me. I'm saying a few words. You should come. Bring the kids. They like baked beans. Mark tried a joke smile. VFW crowd okay with accountants. They're okay with sons, I said. That's what they're mostly made of. Emily tugged my sleeve. Grandpa, can you put the train back on the track? It goes crooked. It's the curve, I said, kneeling. You slow in, you look through the bend, and you come out steady. Same rule on the road, same rule here, same rule when you're talking to people you love. She nodded like I'd told her a secret. Jacob dropped a donut hole on the floor, and we all pretended not to see. When I finally picked up my toolbox, Mark walked me to the door like a boy again. Snow had stopped. The plastic deer looked less ridiculous in daylight. He cleared his throat. We'll be there, he said, to hear you talk, to be there. Good, I said. Outside, the cold took its tithe from my ears and nose. I loaded the toolbox and stood a second with the door open, looking at the house I'd warmed with 2 wrenches and some old knowledge. You can give a lot to a family money time parts of your back and still be asked for more. That's the job, but there comes a day you decide what giving looks like. Back home, I set the toolbox on the table and took out the manila envelope. I spread the papers like a map, certificates, letters, bank statements, the line that proves I'd invested small and steady for a long time. At the bottom sat a copy of a trust document Ruth and I had sketched in ink one night when chemo made her practical. I smoothed it with my palm. Then I picked up a pen and added a line about a scholarship for kids who don't have bus fare, because sometimes the right fix is for people you don't even know yet. I slid everything back into the envelope and closed the clasp. Soon I told Ruth's picture, not as punishment, as clarity. Christmas Day breaks softer than Christmas Eve. Roads are emptier, the town moves like it's been told to hush. I loaded the truck with pipe sleeves, a new shutoff valve, and the little butane torch I trust more than most men. The manila envelope rode shotgun heavy as a thought you've postponed too long. Mark's text pinged at 7:12. Any chance you can come by again? Heard a thunk near the kitchen line. I thumbed back, I'm 5 minutes out. When I pulled up, Frost had traced lace on the mailbox. Inside, Emily wore a robe with pink stars, Jacob a superhero cape over pajamas. Lisa had cinnamon rolls in the oven, the real kind, proofed and punched, not the tube that screams when you open it. Heat hummed right. The house smelled like apology and sugar. Thunk is the pipe talking, I said, tapping the copper run under the sink. We'll quiet it. Mark knelt beside me, flashlight trembling. He's always had good hands. They just learned keyboards before wrenches. Show me, he said. First rule, I told him, don't force a thing that's warning you. Second rule, listen longer than you talk. We shut the main blood pressure, swapped the old valve for a ball shutoff that moves like a promise. I wrapped threads with tape, turned the handle a quarter, watched for weeping. Dry. Your house just got smarter, I said. He breathed out. I should have had a plan. I keep a spreadsheet for everything. I didn't keep one for this. You don't spreadsheet winters, I said. You respect them. Jacob crawled under the table to hand me a fallen screw. For your collection, he said solemnly. I'll keep it with the important ones, I said, pocketing it. He beamed like he'd put the moon away for me. After the water ran clean and quiet, we moved to Little Thing's door hinge that squealed like a gossip, a loose banister post, a step that bit your heel. Emily counted turns on the screwdriver and announced them like baseball stats. Lisa poured coffee the color of mahogany and set a plate by my elbow. No one eats in this house until the man who saved Christmas eats first, she said. The line was light, but the eyes behind it were steady. Mark leaned on the counter, staring at his hands. Daddy said, "Why didn't you tear into me last night? You could have." I deserved it. I was tired, I said, and angry's heavy in the cold. I took a sip. Besides, yelling is easy. Fixing takes more breath. He nodded. He had a way of nodding as a boy that meant he was storing something for later. I saw that again and felt a small shift I couldn't name. I went to the toolbox and took out the manila envelope. Its corners were softened by years of glove compartments and kitchen drawers. I placed it on the counter between the sugar bowl and the napkin holder, shaped like a rooster Ruth had hated. The room changed shape around it the way rooms do when you set a center down. "What's that?" Mark said. "Papers," I said. "Some you know about, some you don't." He looked wary, like a man expecting a bill. "Dad, if you need help, "I don't need help," I said. "I'm offering clarity." Lisa dried her hands slow. The kids quieted in that animal way children have when they sense adults drifting into deep water. I laid a palm on the envelope. "Son, you told me I smelled like gas, and I wasn't fit to hug my own grandchildren." I didn't answer because the house was cold, and words won't warm a single room. But I want one thing clear before we eat our cinnamon rolls and pretend we always get along. He swallowed. "Okay. I drove 40 years so you wouldn't have to. I missed weddings and ball games, and once at sunrise, I wanted to show your mother, because a load had to move. I train kids who can back a trailer better than I can now. I bought stock when they paid me in paper instead of money because I believed in a company that believed in me. I put money quietly where roofs leak and where uniforms are short. Your degree paid mile by mile. This house, you keep it because you keep it up. Respect, you give it because it's right, not because a man's wearing the right shirt." He didn't move. The rooster napkin holder stared at me like I was on trial. I lifted my hand from the envelope. "Open it when you're ready," I said. "Not to be shocked, to be oriented. It tells you what I've built and where it goes when I can't watch over it anymore." Lisa spoke first. "Henry," she said, voice even, "thank you. For last night. For this. For all of it." Emily reached for my sleeve. "Can we open it now, Grandpa?" "Not yet," I said gently. "Sometimes you let the soup sit on the stove a minute so the flavors come together. Same with truth." Mark blinked hard. "I'm the word got stuck." He tried again. "I'm ashamed of what I said. I thought I'd made a life above all this." He looked at the valve we just installed. Turns out I was standing on it. "Good," I said. "Stand better." He pulled in a breath and let it go like a slow leak. "We'll be at the VFW," he said unprompted. "We'll hear whatever you want to say. I want the kids to hear it too." "That's the plan," I said. Cinnamon rolls came out glossy and perfect. We ate with our fingers, laughing when the icing painted our mouths like clowns. The train clicked around the tree with that patient sound toys make when they know they have all day. After dishes, I showed Mark how to label the breaker panel so Panic wouldn't have a place to hide next time. He wrote in neat accountant print. We kept the envelope on the counter quiet and obvious, like a letter from a future you. When I finally headed for the door, he walked me out. Snow squeaked under our boots. He put a hand on my shoulder, a simple thing that felt like a repaired step. "Merry Christmas," he said again, softer. "Thank you for letting me fix a piece of this with you." "That's what fathers and sons are for," I said. Tightening what's loose, replacing what's rusted, leaving the house warmer than we found it. The VFW hall on Wabash smelled like coffee floor wax and 100 casseroles doing their best. Flags lined the wall. A raffle table held a cordless drill and a quilt. Men in caps with gold stitching bumped shoulders, talking about weather like it was a rival team. Eddie Garrison met us at the door with 2 paper name tags and a grin. "You made it," he said then, bent to the kids. "You like baked beans?" Emily nodded hard. Jacob looked for a cookie first. Lisa squeezed my arm. Mark kept his hands in his pockets like he was afraid of them. We found a spot near the honor wall bricks engraved with names and years. Somebody's cousin tuned a guitar. Crockpots clicked. When the post commander tapped the mic and it squealed, everyone winced in the same key. "Folks," he said, "we've got a little business before we eat. Tri-State sent over a thing or two for one of their own. Henry Walker, would you come up here?" Applause came like rain on a metal roof light, then steady. I stood under the lights that make bad haircuts honest. Eddie handed me a small blue box, and the post commander read a note from the company president about miles without a preventable accident, about training 100 kids who could back a trailer like a dance, about showing up when other men called in tired. The pin in the box wasn't gold, but it shone anyway. I took the mic. "My name's Henry Walker," I said, and the room settled. "I drove for Tri-State 40 years. I've logged more hours talking to dispatch at 2 in the morning than most people talk to their own families. I smell like diesel half the time, and diner coffee the other half. I've missed birthdays I wanted and storms I didn't. I've watched Indiana go by slow enough to learn her by heart." Laughter warmed the edges. I went on. "2 nights ago on Christmas Eve, I stopped by my son's house after a long run. He told me I smelled like gas and not to hug my grandkids. He wasn't trying to be cruel. He was trying to keep a clean house, but words do more than they mean to." I felt Mark stiffen behind me. I kept my voice even. I left. Later that night, I fixed their heat in a cold basement, and we all learned something. I'm not telling you this to shame my family. I'm telling you because a lot of us in this room have been mistaken for the job we do instead of the life we built doing it. Eddie folded his arms, jaw set. Lisa's hands were tight on Emily's shoulders. Mark stared at the floor like it had answers. I laid the manila envelope on the podium. This is the part my son didn't know. I opened it and lifted a letter from Tri-State, my 100th driver trained. A service award for 1,000,000 safe miles. A note from the pastor thanking the anonymous donor who paid for the church roof shingles when the rain got bold. A canceled check to the Little League that bought uniforms the color of fresh grass. I held up a thin stack of stock certificates. They looked like homework nobody asked for. I took paper when they couldn't give raises. I bought small and steady, not to be rich, to be sturdy. A murmur went through the hall, not envy, not greed, something like surprise turning into respect. The post commander nodded at nothing. I unfolded one more sheet. Ruth Walker. My wife wanted our life to count in quiet ways. We wrote this trust together at our kitchen table when the chemo made her practical. Today I made it official. I read the headings. 2,529 accounts for Emily and Jacob, funded enough that tuition won't be a wall. An annual winter fund for heating repairs for folks who can't afford a service call when the temperature drops and pipes talk back. A small scholarship at Ivy Tech in Ruth's name for working students who drive nights and study days. And what's left when I'm done, split between the grandkids and the town that kept me employed, fed and pointed in the right direction. I looked up. Faces were soft. Hard men have soft faces if you give them the right story. I found my son. None of this buys respect. Respect isn't for sale. It's given earned and repaired. I don't hold a penny of this over anyone's head. But I won't fund contempt. The trust has a simple expectation: we treat each other like we weren't raised by wolves. Eddie laughed, then coughed like he hadn't. I set the papers down and let the silence get comfortable. I'm proud of the miles. I'm prouder of the people. The kid from Boonville who drives smoother than I do now. The Marine who learned to sleep 4 hours and smile anyway. The dispatchers who stayed on the line when the interstate iced up. The neighbors who show up with rakes and casseroles and don't leave until the work's done. I tapped the mic lightly. If you work with your hands, don't apologize for it. If you don't apologize for that either. Just remember, most roofs stand because somebody carried shingles up a ladder in August and didn't drop them. Applause rose like a thing with its own will. The post commander clapped my back. "That'll preach," he said. People lined up to touch my arm, a widow who remembered Ruth's pound cake, a kid in a Tri-State hoodie who said I taught him to float the clutch, the plumber I'd texted who mouthed, "Nice job, old man." Somebody started the pledge and we all turned to the flag like we were still in second grade. When the noise thinned, I found Mark by the honor wall. He didn't have words right away. Instead, he put his hand on that brick with my name on it and traced the letters like he was checking my spelling. Then he looked at me, eyes wet but clear. "Dad," he said, voice quiet enough for just us, I was wrong. "You were cold," I said, "and proud. Both thaw." He swallowed. "Can we open the envelope together at our kitchen table tonight? So I understand every line." "We can," I said. "We start with dinner. We end with understanding." He nodded, then did something small that felt big. He hugged me in front of everyone without flinching. The room didn't gasp or cheer. It just made space like good rooms do when men figure something out the hard way. "Come eat," Eddie shouted from the buffet. "Beans getting cold." We went, and for the first time in a long time, I let other people go first. That night, we sat at his kitchen table. The rooster napkin holder stared me down again. I slid the manila envelope into the center and let the paper weight the wood. Lisa poured coffee. The kids colored on the back of church bulletins with crayons worn down to nubs. I opened the flap and we started at the top. This is the trust, I said. Letter to the bank. Heating fund at the VFW managed by the post and the plumber who answers his phone. Ivy Tech scholarship in your mama's name. 2 college accounts for the kids. And here what I call the respect clause. Mark raised an eyebrow. That a legal term? It is tonight, I said. Money doesn't move if contempt does. We don't talk down to the people who keep the house standing. We call our elders, we mind our tempers, and when we blow it, we fix it fast, and in public if we broke it in public. Lisa nodded, eyes bright. Amen. Emily kept drawing but leaned her head against my arm. Jacob traced the outline of a wrench I'd sketched for him on the margin. Mark read every line like a man trying to hear a song through a wall. I thought you were... He stopped to try it again. I thought you were just getting by. I said. But steady can add up, so can kindness. He breathed out slow. I want to earn back what I dented. You start by showing up, I said. Sundays at 4, call me. 1 Saturday a month, you and me fix something at your house or somebody else's. Once a year, you take your kids to hand a check to someone who needs it and tell them why we do it. That's the curriculum. He smiled a little. I can do that. We put the papers back in the envelope. No trumpet sounded. The house didn't change color, but something in the air loosened like a knot waiting for the right tug. January ran its slow miles. We replaced the furnace filter on the 1st, and Mark wrote filter in his calendar like it was a client. The plumber texted a photo of a widow on Illinois Street, smiling next to a space heater paid by the fund. The caption said, heat's back thanks to you in 1114. The post said a coffee can labeled winter fixes. It filled faster than I'd guessed. At church, the pastor announced the scholarship. He didn't use Ruth's last name because that's how we wrote it. A young woman in scrubs shook my hand afterward and said she could cut a shift and sleep with both eyes closed before an exam. I went home and told Ruth, and the kitchen got very still in a good way. The kids brought me a note from school, show and tell something you're proud of. Emily drew the furnace with a smiley face and wrote, my grandpa fixed the heat. Jacob brought the donut hole screw and said it held the world together. Their teacher sent a photo of 2 kids beaming and me looking confused in the background because I never know where to stand when people point cameras. On a thawed Saturday, Mark and I cleaned his garage. 3 piles keep donate trash. He held up an old bat and grinned. You bought this, he said. 2 extra shifts to Gary. I remember, I said. You went 1 for 4 and argued the strike zone like a lawyer. We laughed until our sides hurt. That's how you repair wood glue clamp time. That's how you repair people work laughter time. Late one afternoon, I drove to the cemetery where Ruth gets the good shade. I brought coffee and the manila envelope. I told her everything, the cold Christmas, the knock at 2, the VFW applause, the hand on the brick with my name. I read her the clause about respect and the line about students who work nights. The wind moved through the maple like an old hymn. I left a copy of the trust under the vase because I am that kind of man. On the way home, I stopped at Donut Bank and ordered a glazed. The cashier didn't need my name. I sat by the window with the sun coming in low and thought about the miles I still have and the miles I'm glad are behind me. I don't need my son to worship me. I just need him to see me. He does now. Not perfectly, not forever, people forget. That's why you build reminders into a life, a calendar, alert a clause on paper, a habit of calling at 4. The house stays warm if you keep after the small stuff. If you're listening to this and thinking of a person who smells like the work that paid your way, call them. If you are that person, sit down tonight and write 3 lines of your own respect clause. Share this story with someone who needs a nudge to say, I'm sorry. And if you want more true-to-life stories about ordinary hands building extraordinary lives, you're welcome to subscribe and pull up a chair.